Hello, my name is Duriadan Hawk, also known as Daya. I'm with my co-host, Merryana Salem, also known as Mary. We're two writers who love movies, TV, and books, especially when they're gay, and welcome to Gay V Club, where we look at LGBT media that we like, that we don't like, and how we relate to them as gay people of colour.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
We're sort of into it now, but still, it's new.
Yeah, it's
Happy
the first
New
time
Year.
we've spoken to you this year, so
Yeah.
there's that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you like Gay V Club, please rec us to your friends, family, your crush. Leave a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts. Our socials are on Twitter and Instagram at gayv_club. We also recently started a Tumblr side blog for inquiries. Which I don't know why we did this earlier. But yeah, that's gayvclubpodcast.tumblr.com.
For all you Tumblrinas out there.
For all the Tumblrinas, which I feel like should be most of our listener base anyway.
Yeah.
We've also got some bonus episodes on our Patreon, so if you're interested in listening to those, you can go support us at patreon.com/gayvclub. Today, we're doing, as is tradition, our end of year wrap up in January. So we're going to look at all the LGBT media that we managed to catch during 2022. This is in no way a conclusive list because we are just two people.
We are just two people.
We are just two people. And also I just want to note, generally, like, I consider now LGBT media, it's not a genre, but I consider it like if the protagonist is queer in some way. But on this list, there will be some things that kind of only have subplots, but we are going to mention it because we really like it. So we actually realized that there's been a lot of TV, LGBT TV in 2022. So what we're going to do is we're going to split this wrap up into two parts. So this episode is going to be on TV, and we'll release one focusing on film shortly.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add, Merryana, before we begin?
No, I would just add that have been published in 2 anthologies, Unlimited Futures, and This All Come Back Now. And if you like supporting First Nations authors and Black authors, especially sci-fi and speculative fiction authors, please go and buy them and read them and enjoy them. You can read my very gay little stories along with a whole bunch of other gay little stories, because a lot of the contributors for both of those anthologies are also queer. So
cool.
Actually, both of them are edited by queer Black editors. So
nice.
There you go.
To begin with, this is more on a technicality because the show started towards the end of 2021, but season 1 of Yellowjackets finished airing in 2022. We kind of already spoke about it in our last wrap-up episode, but this was before we knew the ending.
Yeah, true.
Because, I think Thaisa Turner did nothing wrong.
I do think they're all valid. Mm-hmm. If they did a cannibalism, actually not even if, they did do a cannibalism. They I
think it would be funny if there is no cannibalism in this show.
That would be funny, but I don't think that's the case.
No, that's not the case, but I do like that the show so far has only implied cannibalism. I do not want to actually see it, personally.
I don't think that that's even the worst thing they did.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I'm like, cannibalism in survival situations, like, just doesn't count. Like, that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Like, if you got nothing else to eat.
All right. I'm never getting lost in the wilderness with you.
I wouldn't eat you, bro. If we were with a third person, I would eat that third person.
Never get lost in the wilderness with us.
I just wouldn't, bro.
Yeah.
I care about you too much.
Thank you.
But yeah, look, in survival situations, I just don't think it counts. Like, that's just my opinion, Like, what else are they gonna do? Like, eat dirt? Like, okay, sure. That's some vegan bullshit right there, in my opinion.
But yeah, let's move on.
Yes.
Mary?
So at the beginning of the year, we had the final season of Search Party, season 5. Search Party is just a deeply underrated, chaotic gay show about awful people that me and about 6 other people enjoy. One of those 6 being Daya's screenplay university tutor.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So, I'm really happy. If you're a person who enjoys a Search Party enjoyer, please sound off. I need more people who've watched this show.
You got 5 seasons. You can't act depressed.
I can, because, even though I've got 5 seasons, it's nobody watched them except for me and these 6 people that I just want to be friends with.
Okay.
So
it's more about,
I'm not acting It's more about community, bro.
Yeah, about community.
It's very hard to give a synopsis of Search Party, but it's basically an absurd dramedy. Okay, so season 1 starts with a group of 5 friends. They're all millennials who have graduated college, and they're still best friends, and they find out that one of their mutual friends has gone missing, and Dory, who is played by my wife, Alia Shawkat, Dory is at sort of a crossroads in life. She's feeling a bit lost and directionless, and she can't understand why nobody is looking for their mutual friend, Chantal, so she decides to go full-on private detective and try and find her. The show is about how them doing this causes their lives to unravel. And the way I've often described it to people, it's like, this is like How to Get Away with Murder, but if everybody on How to Get Away with Murder was just stupid and had no idea
like
how
that's
to...
still How to Get Away with Murder.
Yeah, I know. Now that I'm saying that, that is How to Get Away with Murder, but like, imagine
But
How
they're
to Get
not
Away
in
with
law
Murder.
school.
But they're not in law school, and nobody has a law degree.
Yeah.
So they have absolute, like, they're even stupider. They're even less equipped than the folks in How to Get Away with Murder are to deal with murder. The majority of the characters of the main four, are gay in some way, and the final season, like, they finally let Dory, like, be bi and chaotic and an evil cult leader in season 5. One thing I think is interesting about Search Party is that if I told you what happened in season 1 versus what happened in season 5, you would think I was describing two different shows. But like,
the journey,
the way that Search Party escalates every season, like, makes sense when you're on the journey. But like, if I just describe 2 different points to you, you're going to be like, "There's no way that's the same show." This is part of the reason why I love it. It's hyperbolic and it's insane, and I absolutely adore it.
Yeah. Next up, we have what's quite possibly the best new show of the year, I think. Severance, which is a speculative fiction story about a team of office workers who's gone through what's called the severance procedure, where their memories are surgically divided between their work and personal lives. They're 2 different people in the same body. While they're at work, they don't know what real life is like. While they're in real life, they don't know what they even do at work.
This is like a very incredible piece of speculative fiction. If a lot of people don't seem to know what speculative fiction is, a lot of people just chalk it under sci-fi, which is not technically incorrect, because a lot of speculative fiction does involve, like, science fiction elements.
Before I knew the term speculative fiction, I'd call it soft sci-fi.
Yeah, and it's also been called dystopian fiction, because a lot of spec fic is quite dystopic, but not all of it. But speculative fiction is kind of like, it's looking at the world now and looking at certain, like, social elements of the world, and then taking them to their hyperbolic or end conclusion, and then imagining the world, like, after that point. It's speculating.
Yeah.
A lot of speculative fiction is criticizing, like, current politics and taking them to their sort of worst point, usually. When we look at Severance, it's very much about a late capitalist dystopia. You know, what would happen if we invented a way that corporations could, like, own your body, which technically is already a reality. In Severance, they take it to this, like, technological point where they can literally own you, a version of you that knows nothing else except working for them. And yes, it's sci-fi, because in order for that to happen, you would have to have some kind of technological and scientific advancement that would allow us to do that to the brain. We don't know how the brain works enough to actually be able to do something like Severance.
I was just going to say, Severance is just really slick and beautiful, and, like, it's so precise. It's, like, a little bit too perfect. It's, like, shockingly good in just how sleek everything is. Yeah, the reason that Severance is on this list, as I mentioned, it does have a little gay subplot with John Turturro and Christopher Walken. I think it's nice just to see, older, like a gay storyline featuring older people. And I really love John Turturro for some reason. I don't know why, because I haven't seen
Everyone
many
does.
things
He's
that
just
in.
fun.
I don't think we're talking enough about how hot he is in the Batman, but that's just me.
I love the gay plotline in Severance, because it's like, it's between the innies, which in Severance you are split into your innie and your outie. Your outie is the person you are outside of work, and your innie is the person you are in work.
Mm-hmm.
And never the twain shall meet, so you can't communicate really with your innie and outie and vice versa. But I think, like, with the gay plotline, like, Severance asks this really interesting question, which is, like, even if people, like, are stripped of their memories and essentially, like, their identity, are they still gay?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah. It's just like, what is inherent about you and what isn't?
Yeah.
And like what, like psychologically, like what transfers, like especially like with Mark and obviously his grief that he feels outside, and how like when he's at work, his coworkers, they can tell still that he's sad about something, even though Mark, I don't know. I really love this show. And he
feels sad, like, even though he doesn't know why.
Yeah. It's messed up and Kafkaesque, literally.
Messed up, and it's literally messed up and Kafkaesque.
Next up we had The Umbrella Academy Season 3, which we did not enjoy as a whole. I don't really want to get into that, but what we do want to talk about is Elliot Page and the way that the show wove in Elliot Page's transition into the story, which is something that I don't think we've ever seen on TV before.
No.
Where, an actor has come out as trans while playing like what we know as a cisgender character in a TV show that's ongoing. The only good thing about that season is the way that they gave Victor Hargreaves a transition storyline that was just really sweet and simple and nice. Like, it's not that hard actually for it to just happen and them to just move on. Like, it was really nice.
And I do love how they adopted the policy you should adopt, which is acknowledge the change, but also, like, treat them the way you've always treated them, which they did, which is the Hargreaves sibling blaming Victor for all their problems, and low-key Victor is like responsible for some of their problems. So, I really appreciated how Victor came out and they were all like, cool, that's great, awesome, congratulations. Anyway, why the fuck did you do this?
Why the fuck did you end the world? Never mind about your gender. But yeah, consistent behavior is really important if you have a loved one that's going through / has transitioned. Diego's like, Victor, Luther wants to plan a big stupid party to tell you that you are loved. Do you feel loved?
And Victor's like, yeah, I am.
And then Diego's just like, good, okay, we do love you. Now let's go back to saving the world, which they don't even do. Anyway, moving on. Next up we have Our Flag Means Death, created by David Jenkins, most commonly referred to now as the Gay Pirates Show. It dramatizes the relationship between real people that existed in the golden age of piracy, Stede Bonnet and Blackbeard, who I didn't know was a real person until I watched the show. It just sounds so fake. All of pirate history sounds so fake, which I think is something that this show really goes on, because it's free real estate. When you don't know these things, you can do whatever you want, which is what this show does. Obviously, there's representations of gay male romance. Especially, like for older men again, like in Severance, which is great.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I say older, but I mean, not people over 25.
Not people like under 30.
Yeah, which is great. But yeah, one of the standouts for me was the character Jim, played by Vico Ortiz. They are non-binary, and the character is non-binary, and it's a really fun, even though in that period of time they didn't have the vocabulary for these things to articulate the gender, it's really fun to see the way that they still do that in a way that's really funny as well as very sweet.
While also drawing on the rich history of pirates who were gender non-conforming as well. Yeah. So it's not only is it sort of trying to explore this thing at a time when they didn't have the vocabulary, it's also, historically accurate to have someone like Jim, which is very lovely.
Next up, Joe versus Carol, which you watched, Mary?
I watched Joe versus Carol out of curiosity, partly because it was filmed here in Australia, and I wanted
that period of time where Kyle MacLachlan was just like posting posting selfies, like hanging out in Woolies and stuff. That was very joyous to me.
I have to say that this series, like obviously it's a bit complicated. It had the rights to this story before Netflix released Tiger King, so unfortunately, like the critical reception of it was like very marred by the Tiger King phenomena.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do think Joe vs. Carol, like as a show, does do its best to portray the queerness of both the characters in a genuine way, in an earnest way, that doesn't necessarily be like, well, you know, they suffered homophobia, so they can do all this problematic shit and it's fine. But just to be like, this is another fact about these people. And actually, like, there's a whole flashback episode about, like, how Joe came out, which is actually, like, very emotional to watch.
Okay.
So there is, like, an earnest attempt in Joe vs. Carol to talk about, like, how these characters,
people.
Joe is gay and Carol is bi, like, how their identities are part of who they are and a part of this whole phenomena. It's just a shame that the show itself, other than that, really is not that good. And even if it was good, everyone already had an image in their head of what this story was because of Tiger King, and I think the critical reception of it was very much attached to that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would have mattered if they'd made, like, the best show ever about this. It was never going to be received well. As a side note, they don't use any real animals, and they clearly didn't have a very good budget for CGI. So all the scenes, like, with tigers and snakes and any of the other animals that they have are just very cringe, because it's like, you can tell there are just, like, no real animals there. It's kind of like watching Ewan McGregor in Phantom Menace talk to Jar Jar, where it's like he's not looking in the right direction. But you just let it go, because you know they're doing their best.
All right. Next up, Stranger Things 4, ? You guys know what Stranger Things is, so we're not gonna get into that. Congratulations to Noah Schnapp, though.
Congratulations to Noah Schnapp. I've said this before, he's my fave.
He's always been,
actor.
he's been the best actor out of those kids in this whole show, like, since the beginning, like, even,
Sorry, I shouldn't call them bitches.
They give him nothing to do. Like, the Duffer Brothers give him nothing to do, which has annoyed me over the past, God, it's been like 7 years now.
Not since season 2 has he had anything to do,
No. But yeah, I'm really excited for the next season, even though we can probably tell how it's going to go for him. That scene in the car with Will, it's been memed to death, but also it's just a really well-written scene. I was very impressed with it. It's got so much, like, it's just such quality writing with such emotional depth. I refuse to believe that the Duffer Brothers penned it themselves. So congrats to the person on the in the writer's room that did that.
Congrats to those staff writers. You guys did a great job. I think the Duffer Brothers get too much credit for what you guys do. Yeah, no, that car scene,
I think the Duffer
incredible.
Brothers should suffer, brothers. Sorry.
Yeah, suffer. The Duffers should suffer. Suffer Brothers. I want them to be known as. But I will say, like, obviously shout out to the car scene, which was beautifully acted and beautifully written. But I also want to shout out the scene, because everyone knows I hate I hate Jonathan as a character so much. But the scene between Jonathan and Will, just after that, when they're in the diner, and Jonathan is like, you know, he's letting Will know that he knows, you know, with a capital K, like, he knows, and he loves him, and he will always love him because they're brothers, and
it's the 80s, man.
And it's the 80s. And I just think that I was crying, like, during that scene. That's such a beautiful scene, and again, like, phenomenally acted on Noah's part, and what's his name? Charlie Heaton. I also just want to say, we talk about this in our bonus episode, but, like, Stranger Things is not queerbaiting you.
It's
Please
really
stop saying
not.
that. It's not queerbaiting you.
Yeah.
Stop using that word when you don't know what it means.
Yeah, also
please.
just, like, watch, like, something for grown-ups if you want something that goes into that, like, properly goes into these things. Read The Goldfinch or something. Also, I just want to say that Eddie Munson was actually really mean as a character, and I hated him. And, you know, if
He's
you
a
didn't...
bully.
And he was, like, specifically, like, put there in this season to die because this show doesn't want to kill off any of the main characters, so he's literally there to die, like, from the beginning. You know this. So the outrage is just... Like, people were acting, you know, like when Arthur Conan Doyle first killed off Sherlock Holmes. Like, it's
They're
crazy.
Like, we want a lock of his hair.
But yeah, he sucks.
He sucks.
He
we are
sucks.
Like Eddie Munson haters.
Yeah.
Number one haters.
Yeah, this is not a safe space for Eddie Munson.
Also, he's a shit dungeon master. Like, now that I am doing dungeon mastering, like, the scene where he won't let Erica join in, like, the party is just, that's just not what you do as a DM. If people want to join in, like, it's your job as the DM to, like, make that work, because your job is to keep the story going and, you know, keep everyone having a compelling and good time. And the fact that he was, like, prepared to not let her in, is just... silly behavior. Eddie Munson is not only like a bully because of the way he treated Dustin and Mike in that opening scene where they just were asking to move the freaking campaign. He's not only a bully, he's a bad DM, and I believe this as someone who has been DMing for 4 weeks now. But I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for longer. I've just only recently become a DM.
Yeah, okay, next up we have probably the biggest gay show of the year, LGBT show of the year, Heartstopper, which was created by ex-Tumblrina Alice Oseman, based on her series of graphic novels. It's just a cute little high school drama about young love. I don't really have much to say about Heartstopper anymore, because, you know, it's very universally liked. Obviously, like, we're in our late 20s now. Like, technically, we're both in our late 20s now. And so, like, high school media isn't really for us, but I do really love to see how important this has been for younger LGBT kids. Like, actually, like, the weekend after Heartstopper dropped, like, when I came into uni, because, like, in some of my courses there are a lot of, like, you know, fresh high school graduates, like, who are just, like, you know, 18, 19, like, they were so excited about this show, and they were so happy about it, and they were talking about it, and it was just really nice.
That's very good. It does warm my heart that younger kids, like, have these shows that are very accessible to them and age appropriate for them as well. Us and people older than us, like, come from a time when, you know, the shows that you could watch if you were gay about gay people were, like, The L Word or Glee.
Ugh. When I was, like, the age of Heartstopper's intended audience, all we had was Glee, but also I didn't really know I was gay, so watching Glee actually made me more homophobic, because I thought, and I was thinking when I was watching that, thank God I'm not gay, because I don't want to be this fucking annoying.
But I love seeing that Heartstopper had, like, good teachers, helpful teachers, because I feel like a lot of, not just gay high school media, but just high school media in general has, like, awful teachers, like, across the board, and that's, like, painted as normal. But, like, you know, I feel like in most people's experience, you have, like, good teachers and bad teachers, and I love that Heartstopper had a very lovely teacher who was gay and helped the main character out with stuff on the regular.
Alright, moving on from Heartstopper in the same vein, we've got Heartbreak High, which is Australia's, particularly Eastern Sydney's, solution to sex education.
It's a good one. I like that.
It is the solution. It is a much better version of sex education. It's actually a reboot of an Australian show from the 90s in the same school, but in the present day. And I really loved this series as much as I felt too old to watch Heartstopper. But the thing about Heartbreak High is it was very clearly written specifically by, you know, Australians who are around my age. I had so much fun watching Heartbreak High because it's very much reflects my experiences going to a comprehensive high school. Even though, like, I didn't go to school in a time where it was okay to be out, where it felt safe to be out, it still really spoke to me in a way that was just very fun. And this is just such a funny show. It was really
nice to see a high school that looked like my high school. I'll say that.
Like, the same shitty furniture. Like, that's just in all the comprehensive high schools here. Yeah. They must just get it from the same place.
Just in that aspect, Heartbreak High was more relatable to me than any other piece of high school media I've watched, because when they're sitting in the art room, that looked exactly like the art room
Yeah.
And it's like, and the shitty TV that they roll out to watch the
so real.
so real, incredibly real. So I give them so many points. However, ringing the Guardian because you found some raunchy graffiti on the wall though is like entirely inaccurate.
Yeah,
I will say, as a teacher and
we had a
student,
wall exactly like that in my high school. And it just got painted over every semester or so.
Yeah, it's like not a big deal, honestly.
It's really not a big deal.
Unless kids start getting violent over it or anything, like it really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of it doesn't make sense anyway, just as an Australian watching it. I know a lot of people are like, why don't they have uniforms? And I'm like, they want this show to go global, obviously. They're going to dress cool. Secondly, the big inaccuracy for me is that this is a comprehensive high school, but they have this extra class for these specific students. Who's paying for it? That's my question.
Who's paying for it? Which poor teacher is going to give up one of their, like, timetabled breaks to teach in this period?
Yeah, well, we know which teacher.
We know which teacher.
It's the teacher.
It's the teacher, the only teacher at this school.
But yeah, this series has a great cast, a beautiful cast. Lots of actors who in the Sydney theatre scene are in this show. Something that's really great about Heartbreak High's success is that it has proven the Australian TV landscape is very white, very blonde, very blue-eyed, and I really love that the international success of Heartbreak High has proven that actually people are really interested in stories about Australians of colour, like the lead.
Yes.
The lead is South Asian, there's multiple Aboriginal characters, there's queer people of colour in this show. Like, even though like, you know, it's a very diverse
queer
group,
people of colour aren't real in Australia.
Yeah,
like, they're not real. They're a myth.
They're a myth. But yeah, and I really enjoy the Mardi Gras episode until it gets very tragic. The Mardi Gras episode itself is really fun. I like that they got Benji Ra, who's she's one of the major. She basically like set up the Sydney ballroom scene into like what it exists today. She built so they cast her in the Mardi Gras episode and they got her to do the casting for the ballroom scene, and it's just really nice to see like actual Australian queer icons in it. So they had her, they had like people like Xander Coury and also Jojo the Ho for a bit, which was really fun. We did meet Thomas Wilson White at Queer like late last year, and he wrote on the show. He's written one of Mary's favourite films as well, The Greenhouse.
The Greenhouse on Netflix. It's very good. Great gay Australian movie about ghosts and time travel.
Yeah. But yeah, one thing he did speak about was how he was like the only queer consultant actually working on this season, which is sad. Like, he's very aware of this, like as a cis white gay man, the way he spoke about it, which is like not great. But apparently in this coming seasons, in the future of the show, there are going to be more, which, yeah.
Because that should never be down to one person.
Because there's so many perspectives in the way that this show, like, does very much present so many perspectives. It's really important to just have more people. It could be so much better. So I'm excited for it to get much better. But yeah, I really love Heartbreak High. It's like a less bougie version of Bump. Next up, we have A League of Their Own, created by Will Graham of Mozart in the Jungle fame and Abby Jacobson.
Not Will Graham of Hannibal fame.
No. Could you imagine? Yeah, it's meant to be an adaptation of the 90s film, but it's like completely new characters and storylines. They just tie in the IP because that's the only way that you can.
They're just borrowing the concept,
They're
really.
Just borrowing the concept, really. But yes, it's about the formation of a women's professional baseball team during World War II, while the men are off at war. And yes, it's probably one of the biggest lesbian series of the year, I'd say. Yeah?
This is as big as Our Flag Means Death.
Yeah.
I've often seen people say, like, A League of Our Own and Our Flag Means Death are the two big gay shows of the year. And that's not wrong.
Yeah.
That's not incorrect.
But yeah, obviously the main couple's romance between Abby Jacobson's character and Darcy Carden's character is beautiful. And it's probably like the most likely type of active lesbian relationship that women could have had back then. But the thing is, like, there are so many butches in this show. And just like butches existing, just being there is so much more compelling to me. So yeah, that was favorite part of the show, along with Max.
Oh, I love Max so much.
Yeah, the way that they talk about, like, you know, their like
sexuality and
their
gender.
sexuality and gender, and like the way that they talk about like the butch femme dichotomy and like how they don't feel that they fit into it. It's just good when it's lesbians talking, you know?
Yeah. It's just nice to see. It's nice to see two lesbians. I do.
And not
I
even
also
in.
loved
It's not in like a clinical way either. It's just like very
No.
natural. Like it's exactly the kind of conversation that like me and Mary would have.
Yeah, honestly. And also, I really love that it showed how hard those conversations and difficult those conversations can be when you don't have the language to like articulate what you're trying to say, but you're still trying anyway. And I really like, as you said, that it still sounded natural. Like they weren't talking in these weird clinical terms. You can tell this show is written by queer people, is what I'm saying. It feels very real to me. And another thing that I really loved was the little real queer history like in this show, and like the whole Friends of Dorothy like code, like secret code words and like hidden gay bars and things. Like those were all things that were real and code words that were used, and like the funny sort of role the Wizard of Oz plays in like queer American history, which I only know about because I follow a bunch of queer history accounts on TikTok, and I only learnt about that recently, and I was like really glad when it sort of came up in A League of Their Own, because I was like, oh my god, this is real, I know about this, I saw this. So it was just very cool to see all that in there. And another thing that I really love about this show is that Abby Jacobson was able to consult with some of the two of the real league players that are still alive, and one of them came out at 97. You know, came out at 97 in the course of promoting the show. And I think we often think that representation is like important for young people, and it is, but it's also like very important for older people as well, to see that things have changed and times have changed and it's safer for them, and it's nice. It's just nice. I love as well showing how if you are gender non-conforming in any way, living through that time period was so difficult. And I love the scenes where like Greta and Carson are trying to help some of the like the butch members of the team, because they just like are struggling like so much with, you know, with the whole like makeup and acting, you know, like ladylike and things like that.
The forced femininity.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, the forced femininity. And I liked seeing the solidarity of them all trying to support each other through it, because it is hard. Yeah, lots of love.
Lots of love. Russian Doll season 2?
Russian Doll season 2. I don't have a crap ton to say about Russian Doll season 2. I just love it. Very difficult to say what Russian Doll is about. The first season is a time loop situation. The second season is a time travel situation. Leslie Headland, who is a lesbian, and she appeared in Queer for Fear, which we will talk about soon. I just think season 2 of Russian Doll like goes so hard on so many things. Like it talks about intergenerational trauma in such a cool and interesting way, like by using time travel and being in the body of your ancestors and experiencing what they experienced. The plot line that I think, well, it's all interesting, but Alan, who is the other main character of the show other than Nadia, travels back in time and exists as his mother in 1980s Berlin, And it's just like a really interesting look at gender. And Alan is gay, and so he's like falling in love with the man his mother was falling in love with when she was in Berlin. And it's just like, and he's so happy, like living in her body. Like that's like the happiest I've ever seen him, like in this show, because everyone's like a little bit miserable in this show. But it's just a really nice look at gender and sexuality, like using time travel and body swapping. And also there's Maxine, who's Nadia's gay bestie. She gets her own like fun ep where her and Nadia like go to Germany to figure out the time travel stuff and why it's happening. And it's just a wonderful show, and I love Russian Dolls so much. It's just exquisite.
Yeah, okay, so moving on from Russian Doll, we've got Surface, starring Gugu Mbatha-Raw. That's why I watched it. And this show is like, what if in Gone Girl, Amy Dunn got amnesia right in the middle of her Gone Girl scheme, and also she was bisexual? What then?
What then?
This show is like very sleek and beautiful and everything, but also it's a bit ridiculous. And I don't know how it's getting another season, but I'm glad that it is, because I'd love to see Gugu.
When you describe some of Surface to me, I'm like, is that what this show is about?
I know.
And you'll be like, no, that's just part of it.
With your whole chest?
Oh, God?
Yeah.
Like, for real?
But yeah, it also, Francois Arnaud is in it. So he gets to play a gay character in it again, which is, it's actually pretty funny, because like when he's introduced, he's like such a, tech bro, that does, stocks and finance stuff. I don't understand that part of the story. So it's a bit of a plot twist that he has a husband.
He does the stonks.
Well, not really a plot twist, more like a jump scare that's like, oh, okay. But douchey tech bros can be gay too.
You say that like Stewie Hosseini like doesn't
true,
exist.
True.
That's so rude.
Oh, I miss Stewie.
We all miss Stewie.
We all miss Stewie. Next up, I've got Westworld season 4, and yes, the character Frankie is gay, but you know that I only put this on this list for gratuitous purposes. I always talk about Westworld as if I hate it so much, but it's actually one of my favorite shows.
You're like, I hate Westworld so much, and then you're like, I own the box set of Westworld.
Westworld is like my no good ex who I keep crawling back to like a fool. And now that HBO has like axed the final season, I feel like my soulmate just died.
You're literally like that Lindsay Lohan like clip. You're like, I never said that.
I never said that, and I really hate. I'm not going to explain Westworld because it's been out for ages. I don't have the. I'm going to get too emotional if I try to explain it. But Mary was at my house when I read the news. Mary was sleeping, and I was scrolling through my phone on Twitter. I saw the news and I screamed, which woke Mary up. Like I'm so upset.
It did. I thought someone. I actually remember the fear. Like I felt in my body. I was like, oh my God, someone has broken in or something. And it was even worse than that, guys. Westworld had been cancelled.
They just needed one more season. But yeah, I hate, in regards to, Westworld being my no good ex, I really hate, obviously, because Westworld has so many problems with it, especially in the way that it treats women characters of color. And I really hate that now with the show ended, I have to be sad about how the show ended and not about how the last time we saw Maeve, she got shot in the fucking head, which it's just really weird how like cancellations, I guess people are experiencing this a lot this year. With this year has been the kind of like the cancellation Armageddon. It's an epidemic. It's an epidemic of cancellations.
It is an epidemic. The real cancel culture is actually happening now, and it's all these shows being literally cancelled. That's the real cancel culture. Acts
like how that has to like kind of change, like how that has changed critique of these shows. But yeah, I do think Westworld it's still like incredibly important to critique Westworld.
We should do
an
episode on our favorite cancelled gay shows.
That'd be good. We have like a spec fic sci-fi episode coming up, and I do really want to talk about Westworld in it and how it's about being non-binary actually. But yeah, I think it's really biphobic of HBO to just unemploy 3 openly bisexual actresses like that.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Whenever they share scenes First of all, they're never like kissing, which is insane.
Yeah. We also had Ariana DeBose in this season.
They're always so hostile. And even if they're not hostile in the moment, it's like the subtext of it is hostile because one is secretly imprisoning the other or some shit. I remember how big of a deal it was when Dolores and Charlotte like shared a scene in season 2, and it was Tessa Thompson and Evan Rachel Wood and everyone was like,
given everything.
They were given everything. Incredible.
That's cinema. This season, we had the character Frankie Nichols, who's Caleb, played by Aaron Paul's daughter, in it. She's played by Aurora Perrineau, and she's gay, and it was nice to see. It's like, oh, Caleb's got a lesbian daughter. That's nice.
Yeah.
It'd be a pity if something were to happen to him.
Be a pity if she was in a narrative that never finished.
Would be a pity if her dad died or something.
Yeah.
After she spent her whole life searching for him.
Also, I just want to point out how angry I am that, like, HBO still paid everybody for season 5.
They were meant to have another, and like Ed Harris was also talking about how, like, oh yeah, we're gonna film, sometime next year or something. Like in an interview, he mentioned
like it was already written, it was done, books, it was planned.
What am I meant to do now? Watch the fucking peripheral? Is that? I guess I'm gonna have to now.
Yeah. Tania Miller is so beautiful.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I do want to watch it. I do want to watch it for Tania Miller, actually. But yeah, Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan. I hope you get to finish this series someday. But yeah, next up we've got...
And Daya never said those things. Like they did, but they didn't mean that.
I never said that. Westworld is my friend. But yeah, next up in the list, we've got Letterkenny.
Letterkenny, my best friend Letterkenny. Okay, so this year I discovered, it was the show Letterkenny, which is co-created by Jared Kesso and Jacob Tierney, who is gay.
Jacob Tierney co-wrote Death and Life of John F. Donovan with Xavier Dolan.
The Canadian acting community is apparently very small. It is a sitcom about a town, a very small sort of rural town called Letterkenny, and pretty much every single character in this show is either gay or bisexual, and the show is mostly just about like very ordinary situations, but because the characters are just funny and kind of insane, it ends up being hilarious.
In the bits of Letterkenny that I watched, I love how every time a character is speaking, it cuts to a shot of them, and it's just like constant back and forth in between like the verbal jousting. It's just like the whiplash. It's hilarious. It's so good.
90% of Letterkenny is just verbal jousting. Like that's all it is. And the other 10% is like, they'll come up with some crazy scheme that one of the characters has. In one of the most recent episodes, a bunch of influencers descend on Letterkenny, and none of them really know what that is, like what influencers are, and they just keep calling them influencers. Then Wayne's sister Katie, Wayne is played by Jared Kesso, and Katie is his little sister, who is a bicon. She's a bicon, and she just decides to try and like steal all their business because the influencers are obsessed with like the aesthetic of Letterkenny, and then everyone in the town is competing for the influencers' attentions, and so they keep like decking out their barns with all this like fake hay and mirrors and shit, and it's just very funny, and it's just very, very silly. There's another episode in the recent season where they hold a huge town hall fishbowl meeting to determine what the best flavor of chip is. And this led to a genuine argument in my household where like we were also arguing over what the best flavor of chip is. But yeah, it's just fantastic, and it's really uplifting, and the pacing in it is incredible. It's one of the most incredibly tightly written shows in terms of the dialogue and in terms of everything. It's just fantastic. And Jacob Tierney, who directs most of the show and also co-writes it, he also plays the town's gay priest, pastor? I think it's more accurate to say pastor. I think it's very funny. One of my now viral-ish posts on Tumblr is about like someone asking me if Letterkenny is homophobic. And similar to Search Party, it's like it's only homophobic if you truly believe that the purpose of gay media is to educate people on being gay. And in that sense, yeah, sure, it's homophobic because, like, you know, all these people are crazy and do, like, crazy shit all day. But in terms of just, like, letting queer people create, like, weird shows with their friends where weird people do weird stuff, it's wonderful.
Next up, we've got Drag Race All Stars All Legends. I'm putting this because this is the first time I've enjoyed Drag Race in a long time. I actually just don't watch Drag Race for the most part. I've pretty much quit it. But yeah, it was really nice seeing Raja Gemini, Sita Namral on my screen again. They were the first queer Indonesian that I ever saw.
Oh, wow.
Or even really, like, in real life. I'd never heard of an Indonesian before. So it meant a lot being able to see them again and just seeing them, like, be so good. I think they were robbed in a lot of challenges. But also Jinx Monsoon is one of my other favorite winners, and she was so good. And, you know, like, Jinx Monsoon's supremacy. I also just want to say I really loved the scoring system this season. Like, it made so much sense and was just very nice. It was a very wholesome season as well, because yeah, in general, like, one of the reasons that I stopped watching Drag Race is it just got too mean. So yeah, this season was very wholesome, I guess, because, like, everyone there has like very established careers, and it's not really about competition, it's just about, like, you know, reintroducing yourselves. But I do encourage people to read up on what Evie Oddly has said about the way that they were edited, because it's quite unfair. And yeah, my two faves, Jinx and Raja, won, which I'm very happy about. I mean, Raja didn't really win. Technically, she came 5th, but there's no prize for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th people. On that note, I do want to say that Drag Race Down Under continues to be unwatchable.
Terrible.
I don't understand how it can be so bad when nearly every other version of Drag Race in the franchise has, like, the formula down pat. I only watched the first episode. I just want to say, why would you do a non-conventional sewing challenge in the first episode and make everyone look like shit? That's just, yeah. I will say that, like, I do like that there were more queens of color this season. Like, there were so many more Indigenous and Maori queens in this season, but at what cost? Why is this show so bad? They really need new judges. I really don't think it reflects what the Australian drag scene is. Next up, I've put White Lotus, which I don't watch. I have never really watched, but Christabel Tapia de Veer of Utopia fame does the soundtrack on this show, and he's a gay icon, and he's done it again, and I really love him for that. There's a track on White Lotus season 2 that's just titled Gay, and I know that, like, yeah, it's just titled Gay, and the thing is, like, it uses the exact same tune from one of my favorite tracks on the Utopia soundtrack called Utopia's Death Cargo. It's great. Like, I see you. By the way, happy 10th anniversary to Utopia, guys. Next up, Harley Quinn season 3.
Yes, I am a huge Harley Quinn stan of the character and both this wonderful animated series that has been made about her. In season 3, I think, I don't know, it kind of matured. It was very nice in the way that Harley Quinn as a character, like, can mature, which is still, like, she's insane, but, like, you know, a lot of this show has been dedicated to the will they won't they of Harley and Ivy, but we're done with that now because they're together and they're in love. And I think that is much more interesting because now it's very much a part of this season that because they're both together and in, like, this stable relationship where they're both happy, they have the space to work on themselves and pursue what they want, because in their prior relationships they couldn't do that. And I just love that a big, huge part of season 3 is Harley realizing that, you know, she is a psychiatrist, and she has this realization that intellectualizing her trauma is not the same as actually processing it and becoming better. And, you know, I love watching this silly animated show that's about, you know, Gotham and how silly it is, and it's got King Shark and all that, but then, you know, it's got scenes like that where Harley realizes, like, you know, intellectualizing her mental health is not the same as actually healing from it, and it's like, wow, that's so real. I'm gonna cry for 7 hours now. It's just a really lovely show. It's really well written, iconic episode where she goes into Bruce Wayne's mind and realizes that he's Batman, but it takes like 15 minutes of her being like, why are so many of these memories Batman's memories? That's crazy. Very good, very great. A lot of the time I see people like, we should have a Harley movie where XYZ happens, and 9 times out of 10 they're describing something that happens in the Harley Quinn show.
Yeah. Next up, I've put Tuca and Bertie season 3. Tuca and Bertie is created by Lisa Hannah Walt and Raphael Bob Wexberg of BoJack Horseman fame, which is one of our favorite shows of all time. It had its first season on Netflix, was cancelled, then dubbed by Adult Swim. Honestly, like, I'd never thought that it would be able to get another season after the second one anyway, so it was really nice that it did last this long. But really, like, I could watch this show endlessly.
It's wonderful.
So, yeah, rest in peace. So next up, we've got Mythic Quest Season 3. Mythic Quest is one of my favorite shows right now, probably. It kind of fills the BoJack Horseman shaped hole in my heart a little bit. I think a lot of people do like the lesbian couple that are in this show, Rachel and Dana. It's nice to see that it's two women of color as well.
It is.
Yeah, which is sweet. I actually did really like them this season, mostly because it was just like focusing on themselves like individually.
Yes.
Like season 1, they really annoyed me. Mostly because it was just very one-sided from Rachel's perspective. And then season 2, I'm glad that they didn't waste time like with the whole getting together thing. They just did it in like episode 1. Yeah, I like that season 3, they're just pretty rock solid. Well, rock solid for now. I don't know. Yeah, their own goals and interests. And I really like how this season ended with Dana and her arc. But yeah, I mean, they're not my favorite part of the show, obviously. Poppy Lee and Ian they're my best friends. Actually, they're not. They're their own best friends. They're no one else's friend.
No, they are literally losers who have no other friends, and you wouldn't want to be friends with them.
No,
like...
you wouldn't. Yeah. Also, Danny Putty as Brad Bakshi he's my favorite. He was really good this season. I really loved him in this.
One of my favorite capitalists.
I know, just Brad Bakshi and Stewie Hosseini. You know, I know that they're friends. I know that they have a group chat. Actually, my favorite part of the season was the stuff with Carol. Carol from HR, which is like that's a joke that I only really noticed recently. Because you know the It's Always Sunny, like Charlie Day with the crazy conspiracy meme thing. Yeah, one of the like his whole rant is just like I was like, Carol from HR, but there is no Carol from HR. But so in this show there is a Carol in HR, and like I do like her in like the first 2 seasons. Like she's very much playing the sassy black woman tropey role, which isn't excellent, but I like that she actually has a real arc in season 3. And also it's like it's actually written by Naomi Ekperigin, who plays her as well. So yeah, I really like that the show stepped up in that regard. But yeah, Mythic Quest season 3, I liked it. It's a bit weirdly paced and a bit net zero, but still very enjoyable.
I started watching Mythic Quest because Dad told me that Joe Manganiello was going to be in season 3. I watched it and there wasn't enough Joe Manganiello, but I did enjoy it a lot. But, you know, my favorite character is actually Jo, the assistant.
Oh, she's crazy.
She's insane. I just love her. I think she's gay, but she's homophobic about it because she's
really?
like
okay.
obsessed with Ronald Reagan.
She's like such a specific kind of annoying person that is just like she exists. Like they were so on the pulse. Yeah, she feels so real. Poppy feels so real. Like they're so on the pulse.
Yes.
With like these kinds of characters, I think, which is my favorite part of the show.
She just wants to be friends, but she has no idea how to do that. And that's what makes her like interesting to me. Like the episode where she and Poppy and
Rachel go to the brunch.
Rachel go for brunch is like one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen because it's 3 characters who have no idea how to interact with human beings trying to be friends. And it's just beautiful. I adore that. Yeah.
Next, Only Murders in the Building.
Only Murders in the Building. Mary? I love my little trio of intergenerational private detectives. Only Murders in the Building, for those who don't know, is about Martin Short and Steve Martin and Selena Gomez, and they all live in the same old, rich, fancy building in New York, and murders happen there, and they take it upon themselves to solve it because they are obsessed with true crime podcasts, and then they start their own podcasts. The initial thing I liked about this show was like how real it was in terms of starting a podcast representation. I showed Dale like some of the first episodes where they're like, guys, we have 5 listeners. Like we're doing it. Like, and I was like, this was literally us. We'd be like, oh my god, 10 people have listened. Like we're famous. But Mabel is the character played by Selena Gomez. I knew in the first season, I was like, I know she's bi. Like, I know it. Like, but the first season is like,
Is it
no
just
one's in real.
Is it just because you like her, or because
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I like Selena Gomez.
Yeah, but
I think
mean,
she's
like,
funny.
but I mean, like, were there actual signs?
Well, she was just very.
Yeah, that's okay.
She
That's okay.
reminds
Continue.
me. She reminds me a lot of you because, like, she's like
Oh, no.
really cagey about like who she's dating, and like whenever someone asks her, she almost like gets violent. But this is what made me believe that she was gay in some way.
Decimated me.
Because I was like, oh yeah, all the people I know who are like this are gay. So and sure enough, in season 2, she begins a relationship with Cara Delevingne, who later becomes a suspect in the thing. I mean, it is with Cara Delevingne, but I will say her acting has very much improved.
Oh, okay. That's great.
She is watchable now, which is really good.
The couple episodes that you showed me of Only Murders in the Building, I was really shocked to find out that Steve Martin and Martin Short like weren't married in that show.
They do have like the old married couple affectionate sort of dynamic because they've been neighbors and friends for so many years. The other thing in this show that I love, there's a lot of disability rep in this show, particularly around people who are deaf. That's like actually a very key part of season 1 and also becomes an important part of season 2. I love Selena Gomez's outfits in this show. Like, she's got my dream private eye, cool New York person wardrobe. Her sweaters and her knitwear, immaculate. But yeah, it's just a really nice show, and I also just love shows about like intergenerational friendship because it's just nice. As someone who spends a lot of time with like older people, it's just nice to see like a show where they're not weird about like a young person being friends with like older people, and it just being cool and fun. Because, you know, I think I hate generational wars, so I just like that shows like this exist. And the cameos! Oh my gosh, they just announced that Meryl Streep is going to be
next season, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and next season, Paul Rudd's going to be in next season. He's actually the murder victim in season 3.
Oh.
So I'm like very keen. I'm very excited. Next up is Reboot, which is a series created by Steve Levitan of Modern Family fame. And it's a sitcom about a lesbian writer rebooting her dad's sitcom. So it's essentially a sitcom about making a sitcom, which is like very fun for me as someone who enjoys, you know,
meta
sitcoms and enjoys movie production and things like that. And it's all about writing. It's all about the creative vision and how you compromise it and how you get around it. And it's really nice because she ends up having to work with her dad on the reboot because she's trying to make it more progressive. He wants to reboot it the exact same way, and it's like about how they come together. I know you've watched some of it with me, Dale, like in the writer's room, where half the writer's room are like older writers and the other half are like our age and younger. A lot of the characters in the show are gay. There's lots of casual queer representation, and one of the main characters, who's played by Judy Greer, like has this whole plot line where she discovers that she's bi, which is really nice. It's not perfect. It has some of the same problems that Modern Family has in terms of being like extremely liberal, but it's still fun, and I enjoy the cast. They're all quite funny. It's got like Keegan-Michael Key, Johnny Knoxville. He plays like a washed up actor who's been cancelled for problematic shit, and that's why he's agreed to do the reboot. And the way they introduce his character is he literally runs in front of Keegan-Michael Key's car. He pretends to get hit by the car, and I'm like, oh, of course, like Johnny Knoxville like introduces his character this way. So normal for him. But yeah, it's I had a good time. Reboot is fun. The episodes are only 20 minutes, and they're really tight in terms of dialogue and everything. Like, it's really good. It's a bit lesbophobic, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
I saw that episode.
Yeah. All right, next up.
Hacks season 2 came out. Now that you've watched this show, Mary, like, we can talk about it.
Yay!
I think actually as like a queer show, Hacks is deeply underrated in that regard. Like everyone talks about how like it's a great comedy and, you know, Jean Smart is a powerhouse, and yes, she is. Jean Smart plays the main comedian lady, Deborah Vance, but everyone that works for Deborah is queer in some way, which we don't talk about a lot. Obviously there's Ava, played by Hannah Abbott, she's writing with. Her agent, played by Paul W. Downs, who is the creator of the show as well, and her manager is played non-binary icon Carl Clemens Hopkins as well. So yeah, I really love, just I think it speaks like that she has this team of LGBT people working around her. I think that speaks to just the arts entertainment industry as a whole, and the way that it's actually full of LGBT people just working like behind the scenes or behind the camera or behind the curtains and stuff. Okay, next up we've got Loot, which the premise of this show is Maya Rudolph plays a bumbling billionaire learning to become her own girl boss, which really sucks as a concept.
I couldn't finish this.
It's very difficult to stomach this kind of humor anymore. I watched it anyway because I really love the cast. MJ Rodriguez.
She's beautiful.
MJ Rodriguez, she's beautiful and she's just so good in it. Joel Kim Booster is in it as well, and he's so funny in it. Like I think he and Ron Funch's character, like their friendship is my favorite part of the show, and I just love it. If this was just like a regular workplace sitcom, it would be so good because yeah, the cast and just the general humor is so excellent, but yeah, it's just I don't like it. I can't. Anyway, next up in Minx, which we love.
My best friend Minx.
We love this show.
Probably my favorite new show of the year, really, other than Severance. I just really Minx so much. It's a journalism show, but it's like in a really nifty way. And it's about a woman is it in the 70s?
Yeah,
It's in the 70s. She wants to publish a feminist magazine, but no one wants a feminist magazine because it's the 70s. And the only guy that takes her up on the offer to like produce the magazine and edit it and pay for it is a guy who owns porn magazines. Is the most coolest dressed person who's ever existed.
Played by Jake Johnson.
Again, another show about, you know, the creative process and collaboration and compromising with the commercial aspects and attitudes of the time. It's also a little bit gay. In a very pleasant way that, you know, the whole season I was like, is this?
Oh, you're talking about the stuff with Bambi and her sister?
Yeah.
I put this on the list for Richie, the character Richie. He's like one of the photographers and he's gay, and I really like, one thing I really love about this show is it acknowledges the way that the gay gaze is also like instrumental to developing the female gaze as well. You know, it's the oppositional gaze, I'd say.
Great point.
Yeah.
It's just really fun to watch in terms of like costume design. I love all the outfits so much. I'm sorry, like I really do.
They're so good.
They're so good. I have huge gender envy for Jake Johnson in this show. Like he comes on screen and I'm like screaming. Also, I was talking about this with Daya the other day. Like one of the things I found really refreshing about this show is because it's set in the 70s. When people are being racist, they just like, this is a weird thing to say, but like the way that the diversity in the show like occurs is like, it's not colorblind. Like obviously that's really great, like in terms like when the characters are doing like good things and being good characters, but also like when bad shit happens, like racism, it's directly called that rather than, you know, being coded in the weird way it is now with all these colorblind shows. But yeah, so that's something I really appreciate about Minx is that they are very aware of what they're doing, which is very, very good.
They are very aware of the space that people of color hold.
Yeah, especially in this time period.
In this industry.
Yeah, which is, I appreciate that a lot. All right.
Okay.
Next up.
Interview with the Vampire. It's crazy now whenever someone starts talking about the gay vampire show that we have to ask which one, because there's so many now. I mean, there's What We Do in the Shadows, which we've quit watching because it sucks. There was First Kill, which was terrible. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, that deserved to be canned. I think that lesbians, instead of campaigning for First Kill to be renewed, they should be campaigning for good lesbian shows to be made instead. But yeah, with Interview with a Vampire, I was so shocked at myself for how much I loved it. I famously hate the movie so much. I've said this on our Sometimes Things That Are Expensive episode. Like, I despise that movie. I would cut it from existence if I could. But this show is insanely good. This is another show that's really not colorblind about it at all.
I respect that about it a lot.
So you have Jacob Anderson playing Louis and Sam Reed playing Lestat. They've moved the timeline forward, so it's set in 1920s New Orleans. Yeah, obviously, like, Interview with a Vampire, it's like a brutal marriage movie, except they're gay vampires. It's much more explicitly gay than the first novel as well, and I really like the way that this show, it kind of interrogates existing vampire tropes of, like, oh, the nihilism, and, like, oh, life is pointless, and oh, why wouldn't you be, like, cruel to, why would you care about human life? And I like that it looks at those tropes associated with vampirism and how it's like, actually, this is an attitude of whiteness. Because you're so used to seeing white vampires on screen or in literature. This is an attitude of whiteness that just doesn't compute when you're a person of color, when you're a vampire of color. So I really love the show for that. I think it's so smart. And I also love, we love an unreliable narrator. And we love, like, I love the meta of the storytelling, but I forced myself to finish reading it in 2022, and it's the worst fucking book I've ever read in my life, hands down. Like, I cannot think of a more terrible piece of literature, which is why, yeah, I'm just really shocked that this turned out to be such an excellent show.
I enjoyed the episode, or appreciated the episode of it that I saw.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very fascinating episode to watch out of context.
This is the episode where Lestat drops Louis from the sky. That was a very rough episode.
I was sitting there, like, open-mouthed, honestly. I was like, oh, wow, like, this show is actually going there. It's actually, like, interrogating the source material. So I was quite impressed with it.
Because it's like a meta-narrative of Louis, them doing, like, a second take of the interview in 2022. After the interview in the 90s that canonically happens. There's this line in, like, episode 2 where Daniel, like, actually says to him, like, I have to say, like, it's not so much the minute details, Louis, it's rather that there's a total rewrite that's giving me pause here, which is very much how I felt watching the show, because they've turned such an awful story into something so good. I don't know if that absolves it. Like, I don't know. There's, like, lots of questions about it that I still need to think about. It's like, should we be doing this? Should we be fixing the legacy of Anne Rice?
I think there's a good question in that.
Like, should we be fixing the legacy, or, like, should we see it as a reclamation, perhaps? I think that's an interesting thing to think about with this piece of metafiction. But yeah, the last thing I have to say about Interview with the Vampire is I really love the horror. I love the gore. I love the stylized violence. I'm a big fan of Blood and Guts me. Other than, Lestat punching a hole through this guy's skull in the first episode, which that's where I, like, really locked in. I was like, this is the show for me. In the last episode, Mary, there's a scene where Jacob Anderson, like, rips a guy's jaw out of his head.
That sounds really hot.
Delicious. Moving on. Yeah, Bad Sisters.
Bad Sisters, one of my other favorite shows of the year.
Yeah,
this was such a good show.
It's like if the Big Little Lies show was good.
Yeah, It really is.
It's about 5 sisters, and one of them has a very abusive husband, and it's about the other 4 doing their damnedest to murder
him.
It's very cringe and very funny, but also, like, very horrifying. Yeah, it's a good dark comedy. I think this is the most evil man that's ever been invented in this show. It's honestly crazy. Every time you think, surely he can't be even worse than this, no, it just keeps escalating.
Yep, it's awful. Honestly, this show, the way it unravels, it's delicious. One of the sisters, BB, is a lesbian. She's married.
She's got an eye patch.
And she's married to
Yasmin Akram.
Yes. So I love to see gay, no depth perception representation. It's a very specific niche. I don't see it a lot. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen it. And I actually was quite critical of some of the depth perception things that happened in the show, because I was like, that's not what happens.
Yeah.
But that's just me. That's just what you do when
Mary,
you go
clearly, actually, like, what you need is you need to be angry enough at some guy in order to the point where you actually want to murder him, that your depth perception will be fixed.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
No, that's how it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. You just haven't met someone that evil. Thank God.
I know. I am grateful though that I haven't met someone that evil that would push me that far. So next up we have Rutherford Falls, my beloved.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. I'm still so mad this show got cancelled, but it was the first series created by a Native woman on American television, Sierra Teller Ornelas. It is about two friends in the fictional town of Rutherford Falls. Nathan Rutherford, the descendant of the colonizer who founded, quote-unquote, the town, and Reagan, a Native woman from the fictionalized Minnesota Nation, who are the true Indigenous owners of the land. And it's about how their friendship changes when our BFF Terry starts a lawsuit. Yeah, he's so cool.
Played
he's
by
our guy.
Michael Grey Eyes.
My best friend.
He's like if Gus Fring was not a drug lord.
Yeah. He's like if Gus Fring actually, you know how Gus Fring's whole thing is like he uses his work in the community as a front. It's like if instead of doing that, like Gus Fring invested all his time in just using his powers of his mind to actually invest in the community. Like that's who Terry is. And he starts a lawsuit on behalf of the Minnesota for reparations from the Rutherford.
Woo. It's a sitcom, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. It's a sitcom. Like, it's actually crazy. Like, this show has, like, 25-minute to 30-minute episodes, and the amount it packs in, like, about, you know, very current, like, discourses, and it's like no one is doing it like that. And I think it is a travesty, like an actual travesty. I know we've said a lot in this episode about this show being cancelled is a travesty, but, like, genuinely, when it comes to Rutherford Falls, there is nothing like Rutherford Falls.
Yeah.
The show deals with stuff about, like, cultural appropriation, Indigenous identity, land back initiatives, the effects of commercial capitalism on all of these things. It also deals with a lot of, like, interpersonal relationships between Native people and other people of color, and, like, the complexity of, like, not all people of color, like, stand in solidarity with Native people when it comes to land back, you know, like, again, like, nothing... Literally not like anything I'd seen on TV. The reason we've put it in our, you know, for our LGBT podcast. Not that I wouldn't have mentioned this show anyway, because it's brilliant.
Yeah.
One of the key characters is Bobby, who's played by Jessie Lee. They're a non-binary student who starts the show working as Nathan Rutherford's assistant. But in season 2, they get their own arc running for mayor, and it's so good. It's really just so lovely. Like that, you know, Bobby is given the space to actually create policies around leadership. And, like, I think it's really cool that Rutherford Falls was like, what if we did give, like, a young queer person the space to actually think about, like, what they would want for where they live, like, how would that turn out? And of course, like, it is a sitcom, so there are some, like, shenanigans that happen, but for the most part, like, it's very grounded in what, like, a young person like Bobby would have to deal with, you know, if they did run for mayor of a town, and it's fantastic. Also, for my Letterkenny fans out there, I'm very sorry, I'm gonna butcher her name. I've looked up so many times how to pronounce it, but Kenatio Horn is there. She plays tennis in Letterkenny. She is kind of our best friend Terry's, like, arch nemesis in many ways. She runs against Terry in the election for
She runs against Bobby.
Oh, runs against Bobby, sorry.
But also, Bobby is Terry. And
Bobby is Terry.
Bobby,
Terry is
until
funny.
Bobby becomes their own.
Yeah, it's complicated, you know, but, like, yeah.
Politics.
And she's fantastic, because she's just fantastic in everything. She's beautiful, and I love her. And yeah, even though this was cancelled, like, please still, like, watch this. It's so wonderful. It's such a great show. It does end on it ends in a pretty nice place, you know. Yeah. It doesn't. I mean, I would have personally loved to see, like, the things.
I just would have wanted to see more, you know. Like, it's a blast watching this show.
Truly, it's crazy. Like, this is a side note, but one of my best friends is First Nations from so-called Canada, and she is also a history teacher and has, like, a degree in museum studies, and it is crazy, like, how much, like, I recommended this show to her because she's basically, like, a real life Reagan, and it's crazy. Like she messaged me like crying. She was like, this is actually like so cool to see like a character like this. Also, you know, guys, there's this lovely like fat representation in this show as well. You know, like this show like does like so much great stuff. That's why I'm so devastated it's cancelled. But please go watch it anyway. You'll have a great time.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Derry Girls.
Oh, Derry Girls. Okay. So Derry Girls season 3 is the last season. Derry Girls, obviously, it got really big over the last couple years after season 2. So it was, you know, really exciting to have it back. And they also got like a much bigger budget, clearly, to work with. But also I like that they kind of didn't really need it. So they put that money towards like having iconic 90s songs needle dropping every 10 seconds. Yeah, this show, it took like a really smart advantage of like the 30-year cycle, and so it upped that 90s nostalgia in a way that was very fun. Yeah, this show, obviously Claire's a wee lesbian, and this show, I think the way it portrayed Claire's lesbianism, like as a teenager, like in a Catholic area, in a war zone in the 90s, like it was so, like, you know, obviously there's so many ways that could be portrayed. There's so many ways that could be devastating, but it's really nice that like this show just gave her a space to receive like so much support from her friends and family in a way that's really funny and just so real to the teenage experiences. It's just very heartwarming in regards to that. I do think that Claire is annoying though. I'm sorry, like she just yells. She's like
she's everything I've seen of her. Like I've watched compilations of her, and she's always yelling.
She just yells. She's like Charlie Day. Sorry, that's mean.
I say that about Charlie Day. I'm surprised you said it, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think the way that it shoehorned some actual lesbian romance in towards the end was really weird. It was just very random, which is like, okay, yeah, throw us a bone of like actual romance, but like that's just my opinion, man. Oh, you know another thing that they use their budget on?
What?
Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
That was so...
That
was so crazy.
That 2022 was the year of the weird Liam Neeson cameo. And
yeah,
I don't know who decided and why it would be that year. But at least the one in Derry Girls, from what I saw, was nowhere near as weird as the one in Atlanta.
Oh,
like the one in Atlanta was like, can't even talk about it. But yeah, I feel like that money could have been better spent somewhere else, anywhere else.
No, it was just really funny, like when he showed up, because yeah, it's Liam Neeson in Derry Girls, like that's so random. Next up, Abbott Elementary, which is, it's like the biggest new show. It's just so funny. What do you think about it, like, as a teacher, Mary?
I adore Abbott Elementary as a teacher. Obviously, it's slightly different because it is primary school. I'm not a primary teacher, but I am friends with primary teachers. My sister-in-law is a primary school teacher, and she says, like, it's just so real. Like, all their struggles, like looking after little kids, and the way that the teachers are like presented as people, and when they make mistakes, you see them try and make it right. But yeah, as a teacher, I'm just like really happy that there's a sitcom about teachers that isn't awful, that is actually about how teachers are trying to do their best, like despite a lot of things working against them, including like budgets, their own inept staff. Ava, like one of my favorite things like that I thought initially about Ava is that she's not even the worst principal I've ever seen like in a school. Like at least she's there every day. I've been in schools like on contract where like the principal is like never there, like they're taking leave all the time, or they're just using the budget to go to like fancy lunches. Like at least Ava is there, she shows up, so that's something. The episode I found particularly triggering though is when Gregory is trying to discipline this kid and no one is backing him up, and I was like I was on the verge of tears. I've been in schools and been in that situation, like trying to discipline a kid and like no one is like agreeing with you or helping you. It's very hard, but overall no, I think it's like really lovely, like and also it's such an undermined workplace for a sitcom, you know, like schools are insane places and you don't even have to stretch that far to come up with something funny. So I think it's like, it's crazy that it's taken this long for like a teacher centered sitcom. But no, I love the mentor relationship between Janine and Barbara. I love how Janine is like obsessed with trying all these new things and not all of them work and some of them do and some of them don't. Like, it's just very realistic. And in one of the recent episodes you saw what's her name? Shementi? What's her first name?
Yeah, Melissa.
Melissa. Like, you know, you see her sort of story about dyslexia to like help another student, and that's like a very real thing that a lot of teachers do as well. And I know for a fact that Quinta Brunson has in the process of writing this show, like she talks to like real teachers, and you can just tell. And my dad, who was a teacher like his from when he was 20 to when he was 60, like he watches this show and he cries through most of the episodes. He's like, it makes me miss teaching because it's so real. So yeah, I give it like 100% stamp of approval. The only thing that I don't like is I think that Ava, some of the things that Ava does, I'm like, I don't think you would actually be able to get away with some of this, but like, it's fine. It's a sitcom. The next up, I will briefly talk about Willow, though fair warning, I have not actually finished Willow, but I've watched enough of it to understand. Willow, the series, is a sequel to the 1988 film Willow, directed by Ron Howard, and it's a fantasy film. Isn't
it a George Lucas thing?
It is produced and the story is by George Lucas, but it's directed by Ron Howard. George Lucas, fun fact, really wanted to make The Hobbit, but he couldn't because the rights to The Hobbit had already been bought by somebody else. And so he was just like, what if I wrote a story that was kind of like The Hobbit and we made a cool fantasy movie out of it? And so Willow follows Warwick Davis playing the titular character Willow. He comes across a baby that has been put in a basket in the river, Moses style. And, you know, she is a Laura Denon. She is prophesized to get rid of the evil queen that's sitting on the throne and bring peace to the land. And in the original movie, he is just bringing her to her prophesized kingdom, which has been cursed. Is this
like The Witcher?
Is this like the... No.
Okay. Sorry, no. I thought there was a baby in The Witcher. I've never seen it.
There is kind of a baby in The Witcher. I'll explain it to you later, but it's not like this. But yeah, and then Willow, because he wants to be a sorcerer and he wants to prove himself, he decides to take the baby across the land to where the baby needs to go. But when he gets to the prophesized kingdom, it's all cursed and the people are frozen, so he has to break the curse. And honestly, it's like very good, like high fantasy. You know, it's the kind of movie that like if someone who only likes Game of Thrones tells me they like fantasy, I'd tell them to watch this and see if they still liked fantasy. It's really lovely. The original 1988 film was like a favorite of mine. I know it off by heart. I used to have it on a recorded VHS and I was devastated the day that the VHS tape broke and I didn't have it anymore.
We should watch it sometime.
The series is set, I want to say, 20 years after the events of the film. As a very big fan of the original film, I don't like it necessarily, the direction it's gone in as a sequel. However, I do think that the people who wanted to make the Willow sequel series wanted to make a fantasy series, but the only way they could get it made was by attaching it to the Willow IP. And that's how I think the series has come about, because there is just a lot in it that doesn't feel very willowy, for lack of a better word. But Warwick Davis is still there. I was a bit worried they were going to kill Val Kilmer's character off screen, because he famously has he has like a lot of health issues and obviously like couldn't come back for it. But they just say he's off questing somewhere, which is pretty nice and in character for his character anyway. But the reason I bring it up on the podcast is because the sequel series is like very, very gay. Like really gay. Like, I'm pretty sure like in the little adventure party, there are like 2 straight people in the whole party. And there's like 8 of them. The main character, other than Willow, of course, is the daughter of Val Kilmer's character from the film, and she's a lesbian, and she's in love with her bodyguard / night trainer, who is played by Erin Kellyman. They're both very gay and in love with each other, like from the beginning, like from the first 20 minutes of the first episode. My favorite journeyer. The character's name is Borman, and he's played by Amar Chadha Patel, and he is bi, and he's just Aragorn. He's just Aragorn, but if Aragorn was bi and brown, which I don't want to say if Aragorn was bi because that feels he is. But but you know, if Aragorn was more obviously bi ? But yeah, there's just a lot
if
of
Aragorn
like
wasn't so whipped for Liv Tyler.
For Arwen.
For Arwen. Yeah. If Aragorn like let his eyes stray elsewhere.
But yeah, no, Willow is like a really wonderful, like a lot of people bang on about how they want, you know, more queer representation in the fantasy genre. And Willow does that. It has a lot of gay people, you know, running around doing, you know, the classic fantasy quest stuff.
Did Wheel of Time start last year or the year before?
No, I'm just going to say no because I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. No, I just remembered it. It's bad, so we don't really watch it.
That's Willow. I do enjoy it, like, from the perspective of seeing lots of gay people in a fantasy show. Do I enjoy it as someone who adores the original Willow film? Jury's out on that one. Next up, Sandman. The Sandman. Created by Neil Gaiman and based on the comics by Neil Gaiman. This is not one I finished either, purely because I couldn't finish the comics either, and I was hoping the show could break that curse for me, because I've tried to finish Sandman so many times and I just haven't been able to do it, but I couldn't. I do enjoy the casting and I do enjoy like elements of it, but I don't think the story itself has a through line strong enough for me to like stick around.
I used to really like the comics. I don't think I've ever finished it, and I'm pretty sure I kind of only really liked it for like the Constantine appearances. But yeah, I just didn't give this show a chance. Like when they announced the Tom Sturridge casting, I just think it's all wrong.
Something I will, I guess, give this show a shout out for is that it gave all the Jenna Louise Coleman girlies who were in love with her for years watching Doctor Who, you know, it gave us a scene where Jenna, like, kisses a woman. And that was, you know, if you just think of it as that and nothing else, it's a great scene. If you consider anything else about that scene, it's a horrible scene. But, you know, I don't think that Sandman was gay enough, if I'm being very honest. I think a lot of the fans who love to be like, oh, look at all the reviews complaining how woke it is, that means it's a good show. It's like, nah. It's like, nah, I think this actually didn't do enough. I don't think it did enough for everyone to be this self-righteous about it. I think it had a lot of the same problems that Good Omens did in this regard.
Speaking of,
yes.
Dream's sibling Desire is played by Mason Alexander Park, a non-binary actor, which is great on its own, obviously, because they're very talented. But I think, you know, I don't remember a single thing that we said in our first Good Omens episode. I don't even know if I agree with it, but one thing that I do remember saying that I do agree with is I thought it was really random the way that they made pollution non-binary, and I'm like, what does it mean, like, to just give these characters who are just like, you know, embodiments of concepts genders and then some not? I have so many questions about that. Like, can you I think everyone should be non-binary. Like, they're just concepts, they're not even people. I don't understand. It's like, if you're gonna do that, like, they're all non-binary, okay? And just it would be so much more fun that way. I think Neil Gaiman needs to stop making his shit into shows and write another novel, because I've had it up to here, mate. I've had it up to here. We have Big Huge Sigh, 1899, the Netflix original series created by the creators of Dark, which I'm pretty sure only me and my
dad and a handful of other people watched. It's really hard to explain what 1899 is about.
Can I explain what it's about?
You sure can.
In Lost terms, or no?
Mm-hmm. Go on.
So 1899, Mary gets really upset when I compare 1899 to Lost, but it's not an unfair comparison, and also it's not an insult, because Lost is good.
Okay.
So yeah, 1899 is very similar to the Lost 2004 show, except, they're on a cruise liner in the year 1899.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just about like a group of passengers on this cruise liner who are from like all different parts of the globe, and quite a few of them with like major language barriers between them, and they're like stuck in this with them being lost at sea. They do get lost at sea technically, right?
Yeah, they are. They go to help a distress signal with another ship, and then they can't find their way back.
And being lost at sea, lost on their journey, like they find themselves in a situation where they would have to like interact and rely on each other and work together, which is a story that was like 20 years ago. A story like that was like really successful, and also like it meant a lot to so many people to see like that kind of representation, but also that kind of multiculturalism in a story.
The cross-culture stuff is so cool.
Yeah, in a story. So it's a real shame because, like, obviously, I don't think Lost 2004 is perfect. It has so many issues with it. And, like, I think there should just be more stories. And 1899 was one of them. And it's such a shame, like, to see at a time where, we could really benefit from more stories like it. They just dropped it.
It's just beautiful to watch characters who literally don't speak each other's languages, like, bond over shared experiences, like the shared recognition that they're gay or that they're poor or that they're in danger, like, and with that in mind, that there are multiple characters like on the ship, on the Kerberos, who are like gay, two guys who have stowed away, sort of snuck aboard the ship because they've committed crimes, but they disguise themselves like as a priest and the priest's brother. They're so unconvincing. I love how unconvincing they are, but they think they're doing such a slick job. They're like, yeah, like everyone will believe I'm a priest because I speak Spanish, kind of thing. It's like, it's very, like, I kind of think it's a bit cheeky. There's a French woman who is very clearly not into men, but she's been sort of trapped into this marriage to this guy who knows that she isn't into this at all. And she sort of, there's something going on between her and this pregnant Danish lady. As Daya said, like, the multiculturalism of it, the cross-cultural narrative of it, it is worth a watch. Like, it's such an achievement to film something like this.
Oh, there's time travel and stuff in this show, right?
Oh, yes, there's lots of time travel in this show. The question of what they're actually doing on the ship is very interesting. I won't spoil it for anybody because I would still really like people to go and watch it and discover it for themselves. But the way the mystery unravels, like, if I was to tell you where this series starts and where it ends, you'd be like, how the fuck does it get there from there? But it is just such a... I do think it has some issues with, like, over-exposition in some points, but I think that just happens when you have, like, the kind of setup that it does, and and I still think visually it's one of the most, like, unique things that I've seen in terms of the design of the ship, the design of the strangeness of it is, like, very cool. And it's it's just a show about how shared experiences transcend language, and they're communicated ineffably through the recognized humanity we have in each other, and that's beautiful.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
As you said, Day, that's the kind of story we need right now. So I don't understand like why it's not around.
Okay, next up, we have Sort of Season 2. One of my favourite shows, created by Bilal Beg. It's a Canadian series about a non-binary Pakistani person navigating through life.
Those don't exist.
Yeah, they don't exist. I don't exist.
They're only fictional.
Written by a non-binary Pakistani person. They deserve everything. I'm so grateful that this show exists. I never thought a show like this would exist ever. It's a really great look at just what it's like being queer when you're like around our age, but like if you're still working things out, especially like if you are a person of color from an ethnic culture, and how, like, you know, there can be a bit of a delay realizing who you are. It's about transition and about how everyone is kind of going through a transition of some sort.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful. This season 2, is like, it's like a season of love. There's a lot more romance in this, which I love so much. You know, obviously, like, with the whole being Pakistani thing and race Muslim thing, I crave, you know, brown girl media about brown women, brown daughters, especially, who are just like absolutely done with the way that they're raised, and like looking at that. But something really interesting about sort of a perspective that I'd never really thought about before. Unfortunately, I should have. Subby is assigned male at birth, so that dynamic of being, like, having the privilege, I guess, like within the family, of being, you know, the oldest son, and not accepting that privilege, and throwing that privilege away, is like something that this season explores, that's so interesting to me. And I love that in this way, like, it does acknowledge the lack of privilege and respect that brown women do face within, like, the patriarchal family. And it's so clever and just so needed. So much needed. This is also an HBO show that I was very surprised. It's been renewed for season 3, which
I know.
When, like, you know, all these shows were going, like, were being guillotined, I was like, oh god, I'm gonna find out that sort of gets cancelled next too. But it got renewed, so
I know.
trans rights.
Yes. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they realized, A, that sort of is a great show, and B, that, you know, it would be a really bad look for them.
Well, I mean, they also cancelled We're Here and Legendary,
Oh,
which are
true.
like major trans shows on TV right now, which is quite sad as well. So it doesn't make up for it.
Yeah.
I am just grateful in general that we're getting a 3rd season, because I want to know. I want to see this played out. You know, this is a love story. You know, my nose is bleeding, and I'm telling you, this is a love story.
I really enjoyed more Seven. Seven's my favorite, and I really enjoyed the whole sort of arc where Seven wasn't sure about a lot of their friendships, and especially like the friendships they'd formed, like with the kids of the family that Sabi, you know, looks after.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, like, intergenerational friendships is something that I really like seeing in media, and I feel like a lot of the time they are demonized and made into these toxic things, which they absolutely can be. But I think sort of is like a great example of, you know, Seven is friends with these kids. They're genuinely friends. And so Bessie, who's the mom who is going through like an ultra transition in a way, like she's waking up from this coma that she was in as a result of an accident, has a lot of muddled thoughts and memories, and her personality is quite altered as a result. And she sort of roasts Seven for being friends with her kids. It forces Seven to think about, like, actually wanting to be, what it means to be friends with a younger person and the responsibility of that. And that was probably, like, my favorite part of the series, because Seven is a quite immature person, and I like that this series was also about them, like, gaining maturity, and also the stuff with Seven and their mum as well was really just showing that, you know, fighting for the recognition and not to be misgendered. I love the trio of this series, which was Seven, Sabi, and Wolf. Thought they were a great trio, honestly. All the scenes with the three of them planning the bar, like, I absolutely loved. And I actually love the whole planning of the bar as, like, the main plotline of this show was literally fighting to have, like, maintain queer spaces with gentrification and everything like that. So that, like, this show just has, like, so much in it, and it's insane how much it manages to fit in, like, just 25 to 30-minute episodes. Like, it looks at so much, you know, that when I actually start talking about it, it's like in a single episode they're looking at, like, intergenerational trauma and queer spaces and, you know, intergenerational friendship. Like, there's so much stuff that it does, and it's just so impressive, honestly. I have, like, writing envy watching, sort of, because it's like, it conveys so much with so little.
Next up, Queer for Fear.
We love a multimedia anthology freaking, what are they called?
Analysis, docu-series.
Yeah, docu-series.
Yeah.
We love documentaries about media. Let's go.
So this is by Brian Fuller. It's a docu-series about the history of queer horror. Just looks at like different like tropes and archetypes and like periods of time. And it explores like how queer subtext has always existed in horror and how it, in a way that's like good and bad.
It's basically the history of horror through a queer lens. And it has a lot of brilliant contributors in it. Queer writers and directors and critics and podcasters and
I was so insulted
actors.
that Brian Fuller didn't email us to be.
Yeah. Why doesn't he listen to Gay V Club? We have
Didn't he listen to Jennifer's Mind? Like, what?
So crazy watching Queer for Fear. You'd just be watching it and you'd be like the Leo pointing meme. You'd be like, hey,
This
like
person.
I know that. And it was just really good. I really enjoyed it. They have sort of an episode about vampires. They have an episode about werewolves. They have
about Frankenstein, Uncanny Valley, like all these kinds of things. Where you can see the subtext or where it's intentional, like where like historically we found out that it's intentional. I really loved the bit on Alfred Hitchcock and his films.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Oh my god, Karen Kusama ripped him to shreds. Regarding like his misogyny, but also his desire to like present different perspectives, i.e., you know, women's, and also like the way that he's actually worked on so many stories written by queer people or like with queer subtext, and often with who were, you know, closeted gay at the time.
The segment on Psycho was really eye-opening.
I didn't realize there were that many Psycho movies.
Well, yeah, number one, I didn't realize there were that many, and number two, I just didn't know what happened to him after that movie.
Anthony Perkins.
Yeah, Anthony Perkins. That was quite sad, but also important to remember that this is how it used to be, and there's a legacy of it that still exists. And something I really admired about this documentary in general is that it didn't shy away from acknowledging how this media like was also deeply problematic in other ways, which is good. I think that was actually what started me on my documentary kick, because I was like, oh, I really enjoy watching these. Like, you know, so I've been watching more. I've
been watching this docuseries that it kind of flew on the radar. It's from 2021. It's called Pride, and it's just like a history of the LGBT movement in general, and it goes like by decade, I think, starting like from like around the war and forward. And yeah, like each episode is directed by a prominent LGBT film director. Like I know Andrew Ahn does the first one, I think. Cheryl Dunye does another one, and just it's really fun. Also, they get LGBT actors to play certain historical figures, just like giving monologues and talking about themselves. So like Elia Shawkat is there for a bit. I forget who she's playing, but it's a real good little docuseries. It's very nifty. And yeah, finishing up the TV section, we've just got some of our favorite non-LGBT shows that we want to give a shout out to. First one being The Lazarus Project.
Woo!
Oh god, it's so specific. This show is filling the Mr. Robot-shaped hole in my heart.
Yeah,
and the
it's
Utopia
so good.
hole in my heart, and just so many things. It's like all my favorite things wrapped up into one. It's about a group of time travelers. Well, they're not. I don't know, are they time travelers?
They are.
It's about this organization that has a time machine that allows them to reset to a certain point in time whenever the world ends. So whenever the world's about to end, they can reset back to July 1st. That's the checkpoint. And if they can make it through the whole year without the world ending, the following July 1st will be the new checkpoint. So it's a time loop.
It's a time loop, but the time loop is a year.
Yeah, but the time loop is a year, and also it's optional, ? It's one that they have control over. And yeah, so the organization is a group of people that can actually feel the time loops. And yeah, it's a brilliant show. It's not gay, but like there's something going on. It's not gay, but there's just some really fun vibes between Shiv and George that I find very funny. And also Shiv Reddy is just like probably my favorite new character on TV. I love him so much. Also, it's really nice that like the main trio cast are like all people of color.
Yes! I was gonna say, I really love
Anjali Mohindra
as Archie, because I used to love her when she was in the Sarah Jane Adventures when she was a kid, and it was just nice to see her in another time traveling show. I like to think that they're part of the same universe because it would just be funny.
Sure.
She is so great. Yeah, she was my favourite Sarah Jane, so I just love seeing her here.
Yeah, so you got Anjali Mohindra, Papa Sidhu plays the lead. He's so great in it. George is so funny. I love him so much. He's like
the some guy protagonist of all time.
I love like intelligent characters, like they know stuff, but they're really dumb. That's my favorite kind of character, and I think that's really important representation right there. And then Rudy Dumalingam as Shiv. He's my guy. Vinette Robinson is in it, and she's great. Tom Burke as well, my bestie. Not my bestie, but my favorite nepo baby. Yeah, it's just an excellent show.
House of the Dragon, I feel like doesn't really need an introduction. It's like the biggest show of last year, pretty much. But in case you don't know, it's a spin-off of Game of Thrones set 200 years before the story of Game of Thrones, and it's about the fall of the Targaryen dynasty, dealing with the Dance of Dragons, Civil War, and it's a little bit gay. It's kind of deliberately that way, which is a bit strange. I wouldn't call the show itself gay, but like the lesbian subtext is very powerful and very deliberate. A lot of the directors have talked about like deliberately playing it up in the show, and the actors have also talked about deliberately bringing it out. So the relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent, it has a lot of lesbian subtext to it that has been deliberately brought out by the actors and by the directors of various episodes because it's there.
Yeah.
It exists.
It's vital to the story.
It's vital to the story. And while, again, like I said, I wouldn't call this a gay show by any stretch of the imagination, to deny that sort of subtext of it, I wouldn't even argue that it's subtext. It's so strong. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, Alicent's gay.
Yeah, Alicent is 100% gay. It's my favorite element of the show, and it's also like a major thing driving the plot of the show as well, and driving one of the major dynamics in the show. Like, to say that it's like just something made up and small is not true. It's like a massive part of the series. Congratulations to House of the Dragon, I guess, for winning the Golden Globe that they clearly didn't think they were going to win, because, like, none of them freaking showed up except for Emma and Millie, and they were on the stage just absolutely, like, trying to stand up straight and could barely do it because they were both, like, so maggot.
I appreciate that the first thing the showrunner said when he got up on stage was that Severance was brilliant. Because I don't like Game of Thrones. I don't like that Game of Thrones like dominates award seasons, and I hate that like with House of the Dragon back it's just gonna keep doing that, even though I don't think it deserves it. So yeah. Oh yes, shout out to Better Call Saul, Gus Fring. I feel like there's several moments like in Breaking Bad and in Better Call Saul where you're basically told that Gus Fring is gay, but I love this show so much. Also Lalo Salamanca, I don't know what else to call you. So
yeah.
And just brilliant show all around. Yeah, Kim and Jimmy, they're lesbians actually.
What?
What?
How?
That's really lesbophobic of you to ask.
You say this about a lot of, like, ships, and I honestly get so baffled by it. Like, I don't understand. Is it just because you...
It's because I like them. Like, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Also, I really loved the Serpent Queen. I talked about it a bit last episode, but it's a really fun, edgy period drama looking at Catherine Medici and the political maneuvers and how cutthroat it is, and just I love like how brutal everything about it is. It is a little bit gay. I wouldn't say it's gay enough to call it a gay show. There's The Bear as well. Yeah, I really hate how this award season The Bear is being nominated in the comedy categories. I don't like that. It's very much a drama.
We need a dramedy category.
No,
we need it now.
No, that's not the solution, unfortunately. Yeah, just as someone who really loved Lip Gallagher back in the day, I'm really happy to see Jeremy Allen White on screen in a show that's good.
This show annoys me because he's the only... Like, I love this show, I should say, first of all. It doesn't annoy me. I adore this show. I especially love the soundtrack of this show and the way that it's shot. But one thing that really annoys me is that Kami has his hair everywhere all the time. And my friends who work in hospitality tell me that this is, like, very normal for, like, chefs to not wear anything to protect their to stop like a hairnet or a headband, but it just bugs me because nearly everybody else in the kitchen does wear something to hold their hair back or have their hair done in a way that it won't go into the food, and he doesn't, and I don't know why, but that just really, I find it very distracting. Also because he has very nice hair, so like it's just
half the
distracting.
Performance comes from him like pushing his hair out of his face.
Yeah, and that's probably why they know that. That's why they don't give him a hairband or a hairnet. But no, I do adore the bear, and I love that it's a grown-up show. It's a show about adults, and like, no, I say this because people try and reduce it to like a weird, like people try to oversimplify it, but it's like show about like adults who are grieving and have like complicated relationships and goals and lives and that are also kind of crazy and. You know, it is also a show about grief, and we love shows. I love shows.
Yeah,
about
and one
grief,
of the head writers is Joanna Carlo, who worked on BoJack, and you can get a bit of those vibes from it.
Yeah, you can.
Is that it for TV?
You didn't say that you think Kami is gay.
Oh yeah, I think Kami's a bit gay. I feel like the way that Mikey treated him, like there's undertones of homophobia there. In the way that it challenges his masculinity. So I think it would be nice, you know. Like it's not super important to me in the grand scheme of things in the show, like to see that, but I'm just saying.
One of my favorite like brother sister relationships ever that I've seen on TV is in The Bear, with Kami and his sister. I just love them so much. How they fight all the time, but they're really supportive of each other. Like, I love when that scene when he's like, will you fight with me again tomorrow? And she's like, always, you know, like, I love them. Oh, I did want to briefly shout out the second season of I Hate Susie.
Oh, yeah.
Slipped in there like literally at the
on Christmas
11th hour. The second season, dare I say, is like somehow more insane than the first, but oh my gosh,
it's so short. It's only 3 episodes, but it's brilliant.
I was devastated actually that it was only 3 episodes. I was
know.
like, no.
When it ended, I was like, wait, is that no,
wait,
no.
Yeah.
But it's just a really tight story.
Yeah,
which we love. I feel like so many people have been complaining this year about how like seasons of TV are getting shorter and shorter. It's like, well, I love not to like have my time wasted on filler.
Yeah,
you know?
me too. And I also want to shout out The Devil's Hour. It's probably one of the better, like the best shows I've seen that's like filled in a little bit of the OA hole in my life. Oh, OA hole, that doesn't sound good. The hole that was left by the OA. And it's just like a really well-written like show about time. I think that's all. Oh, I really did enjoy Mo. That was a show that came out this year. Loved it, and I'm like really happy that it got a second season because it has one of the most insane endings I've ever seen of a show. And I was like sweating thinking about like if they cancel this and I never know like what happens, I'm gonna think about it for the rest of my life. And also one of my other favorite shows I did briefly mention, but there's a spin-off of Letterkenny called Shoresy, and the first season of it came out in 2022. It is a show about masculinity in many ways, and it's like very fun and small. It's got Jared Keeso there being Jared Keeso. Like, I don't know, he took his own tooth out surgically so he could realistically play a hockey player. Like, he's insane.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah. They asked him, like, I found an interview with him and Jacob Tierney when they were talking about Shoresy. Jacob Tierney is not as involved in Shoresy, like, it's mostly Jared Keeso, but, like, he talks about how, like, he did a lot of training, obviously, for Shoresy, but the main thing that he did was surgically remove, like, 2 of his teeth, so, because all the other hockey players, like, have no teeth, and it would look weird if he had teeth, so he removed them, and so now in Letterkenny, like, when he's filming Letterkenny, he's wearing, like, fake teeth.
Oh, God. Okay.
It's two of his front teeth. Yeah.
That is dedication to the craft.
Those are my shows. I don't think I have any more.
Starstruck season 2 came out in 2022. That's Rose Matafeo's rom-com show with Nikesh Patel, and I love it so much. It makes me so happy. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much it for LGBT TV of 2022. We'll release our part 2 of this on film shortly.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.